water to your customers than you think you can. I think everybody has cut back, but I think they're all ready to go gung-ho again. So I'm almost thinking 1,000, buy 1,000 acre-feet from McConnell, have it there if you need it, open it up to your customers, take away all the penalties, and I think you will find that it sounds like it's, I think you're charging, what, $1.25 now?
$104.
$104. So you're not going to quite make your, I was thinking it was $1.25. So you're really not going to make back your money.
Nope.
So maybe 500 then.
Yeah, if we get our full complement, we've got 6,200 acre-feet of water that we will not even use. There's no way we can use all that. Any other comments on the amount? Yeah, Colleen?
I believe 500 would be a good number. And I think that discussion about the penalties and the fees, that plays a major, major part into this. Because that's what's holding me back. And I know it's holding a lot of people back. We've had thousands of dollars worth of loss. It is what it is. The trees are gone. But I want to get that pasture back. I'm irrigating with a hose and a sprinkler, a lawn sprinkler, okay, on my pasture. It's not working. We're spending 2,000 in hay because we're having to feed all year round because we can't even get the grass to grow. So I believe that is a big, major piece of this, but I know that's for another discussion. I think 500 is a safe number. I really don't think we need 1,000. I think 500 would do it. I just want to.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll bring it back to the floor. Or back to the board.
Yeah, can I just comment on one quick thing? What Dennis had to say, he brings up a good point. You know, if you got a lot of water, what are we doing with the penalty? And it may be that with the purchase of 500 acre-feet of water and the numbers that we have now, and looking ahead and seeing that those numbers may be firm, we don't really need any penalties.
Okay.
Well, we'll discuss that,
Later,
yeah.
because you got a drought ordinance coming up.
Okay. Yes?
I've got one thing that is kind of totally irrelevant. I don't know who knows, and I've not studied it completely. I don't know. I do know a guy that does know. But a long time ago, I guess back in the early 60s, when the water company went broke, I think the Lima Ranch, or that ranch by the South Dam, the Clear Creek Dam, that they removed the dam. McConnell bought that ranch.
Oh, yeah,
That
Gore
ranch.
Ranch.
That ranch had bought our water rights.
Yes.
So essentially, we're buying our own
Yes.
water.
Yeah. No, that was the Gore Ranch. They bought the Gore Ranch. Yeah, and along with that came Seltzer Dam.
Yeah.
And the federal government at that time wanted to restore Clear Creek. And so they approached the McConnell Foundation about getting rid of Seltzer Dam. And said, McConnell Foundation said, sure, we'll get rid of Seltzer Dam, but we want the water right to Seltzer Dam in perpetuity, which was, I think, 6,000 acre-feet at that time. 6,000 acre-feet of water a year. And they bought it and also got $6 million from the federal government for it. So they came out smelling good. Now, subsequent to that, and I don't know how that transpired, but 900 acre-feet of that was then sold to Centerville. And Centerville now has 900 acre-feet of that 6,000. McConnell's got the 5,100. Centerville has 900. Nobody can touch it. Everything can run dry. They still got it.
I'd like to throw another scenario into the mix. It's probably too late to do much about it right now, but there is another water entity near us that might be available for transferring if we approach them. They have need for funds for a few things. I know they've reached out to us for potentially running a line up, and it's already stubbed up close, to put a fire hydrant up. Rainbow Lake, I don't know. Would that be something we could possibly approach and maybe get water cheaper than McConnell?
We went through that, you know. We approached them. They told us to go away.
Okay. But they
The
do have some
board
need.
did not want to talk to us. As a matter of fact, we had the chairman of the board come to our meeting one night and said, "We don't want to talk to you." And so we stopped.
And I would just say, those are the kind of conversations you have under an umbrella.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. We need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
What's your motion?
We purchase 500 acre feet from McConnell Foundation as an insurance policy.
Okay, we have a motion to purchase 500 acre feet from the McConnell Foundation as an insurance policy. I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so let's do an individual vote on this, if we would.
All right, so just to restate the motion, Madam Chair, the motion is to approve the water use agreement at a 500 acre feet contract as insurance for the coming water year. And so I will call out the names.
Okay,
Are you ready? Director Lincoln,
Yes.
Director McVeigh,
Yes.
Director Fuss,
Yes, I'm going to vote yes on it.
okay, and Chair Pick.
no.
All right, the motion passes on a 3-1-1 vote. Thank you.
Okay. I just don't think we need it, folks, but that's just the way it goes. So prove me wrong. Or no, let me prove you wrong.
Flip a coin.
Well, it may happen, you know.
Yeah, it could very well.
Remember, we're just buying insurance.
I just don't like being manipulated, and that's kind of the way I feel with their letter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, is that you're being,
Oh, you mean the Bureau letter?
Yeah.
Let's get used to it.
Dan, if you know.
It's going on forever.
You work for the federal government.
Yeah, exactly, I just gonna do. You do federal.
6C, water storage, drought ordinance 2023, XX, replace ordinance 22, or 2022-01.
All right, so to the board, this is just an opportunity for you all to make some comments and input on this ordinance. So one of the challenges that this district has is that we seem to like to do everything by ordinance. Again, you know, that means we need a public hearing, so you're going to see in the newspaper that there's a public hearing for March 15th at 6:30. We're going to start our meeting at 6, but the public hearing will be at 6:30 to review this. Now, I strongly urge the board to consider an ordinance that allows us to do things by resolution in the future, by the way.
But do what?
By resolution, do certain things. I mean, we still want to have ordinances, but there's some things that we should be doing by resolution. So, as I mentioned before, currently, the district is operating under a 22-01 ordinance that is declaring an emergency, water shortage. We had a zero allocation, a bunch of other stuff, and the optics on that is really bad. So we really need to get this thing changed. So I've made some edits based on comments from board members to that previous ordinance, and it's in your packet. So I'd just like to go over a few of those items, but also just in my memo, I mentioned, again, I bring it up to you, this drought planning and water shortage policy. A little disappointed that 22-01 that the board approved last March didn't refer to this. But they said that they declared it as an emergency. They could have actually also referred to this. But in this packet, it does refer to different stages. Now, all districts are required to have a drought and water shortage policy manual. They've actually had some updates to those criteria. This district needs to update this 2010 one. This one's pretty old. All districts now are supposed to have 5 stages. I think Centerville did what I've counseled other districts to do is they had 4 stages, so they created stage 0. In other words, a stage 0 is everything's good, and that way they've got their 5 stages. But in our policy, stage 2 water shortage is triggered when there's 75% M&I, historic M&I, and 45% agriculture. Stage 3 is triggered when it's 75% M&I and 25% agriculture. So with our Bureau allocation being irrigation right in between those 2 stages, I'm suggesting we could do stage 3. But I'm willing to say, why don't we do stage 2? But I mean, I think we probably should do stage 2. If you look at the ordinance, some of the changes, one of the things we have in it is we are rescinding ordinance 2201. We want to get rid of that, all that old stuff there. We have some of our items, our background, our CVP, our whereas, and what our current allocation is. And then there's, at the bottom, there's that district is, determined there's improved conditions over 2022, and this initial declaration, we can call it a stage 2 or 3. I put in here stage 3, but, I kind of think based on the rains that have been going on, we might want to do more stage 2. And the fact that now that we bought some water, we might want to make sure we're encouraging more water to get used, right? So, but I think you had comments from at least a couple of members of the audience that recognizes that by having an allocation, we are still technically in a drought. And even though it's weird to say that, and it's raining and snowing like crazy out there. So we'll fix the water use agreement item. So at the top of page 2, there's this whereas the combined water available as estimated supply. So this is something we need to change. We probably should make it 90% of their 2019. I think because we've got a lot of ag water, we might want to separate out. I'm open to what you think up there, but we might want to say no restrictions on agricultural water, but because we only have 75% of M&I, that we're going to do 90 and maybe 55 HCF per month. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas. You can talk to me about what you're thinking about that. That happens again in top of page 3, which is maximum allocation restrictions. That just pretty much follows that previous whereas. A couple other things that I did update, thanks to some comments from a couple board members and just kind of looking at some other ones out there. No filling of pools, blah, blah, blah. We could change that based on the fact that we have more water. We made some changes to the fines and penalties. Maybe we want to change the chart on the left and not trigger a penalty until they're, 50 HC over or 25 HC over, and have that be the first penalty. We reduced it down to basically the top end, $5 per HC. Instead, remember, it used to be the bottom of the 100 HCF was $1,500 penalty. Yeah. And here I'm proposing 5. Up to the board. We can change it. Now the violation, that did get bounced up from $50 as an initial. We can change that. Just an edit. That's something that was suggested. You'll see that we changed a bunch of the protest procedure. Basically, nobody likes seeing the board spend hours and hours and hours reviewing that. So, in other words, if somebody wants to protest the decision of the district, me, the general manager, they can come to the board. But probably unlikely that will happen in a lot of instances. variances, we may want to really change that. You know, one of the things that I don't think the district did that calls for them to do in here is we're supposed to contact the schools and the cemetery and a bunch of others to say that we're in a stage thing of our drought ordinance. And I got rid of landlord, my designee, and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, what the heck, we don't need any of that stuff. There you go. This is something that will be for your decision on March 15th. But input is welcome, so we can modify and edit it up.
Okay,
On the violations, you know, I don't have any problem with the amounts there. What I would like to see is if they're habitual violators, you know, every time it's the same large amount of water that they're using, then I think the penalty should go up somehow.
It goes in, falls in here, the II, if you read through that, they have an additional penalty of $100 the first time, $250, $500, and if we could then actually disconnect their service if they
Yeah.
continue.
Well, that's fine then.
Okay, but I'm concerned that for the habitual high users, that they might do June, July, August, or July, August, September, pay their fines, not worry about it, and then because the weather changes, they don't need as much, and they don't do that. I'd be tempted to be interested maybe after the second fine, the potential to disconnect their service. In other words, bad the first time, you repeated yourself when you, after paying the fine and known that you had become a habitual overuser. You know, now we send you a letter, if it happens again, you will be disconnected from this, you know. And then there's a reconnect fee, they have to pay all their fines and penalties, plus the water usage. Just an idea.
so go ahead, Erwin, you have
Go ahead if you want.
Well,
I'll-
I don't think we should have any penalties. So I don't think we need to have that discussion right now.
Okay.
Come May, if the Bureau comes out and says you're getting nothing, then we'll have to institute something of this nature.
And to your point, doesn't it in the drought ordinance state that when we're at a certain percentage of M&I, was it 75%? There are no penalties?
So, what it says is, if we have a stage 2,
Stage two.
during a declared stage 2 with a district agriculture allocation of 45 or less,
Okay.
no new accounts will be established, ag accounts, and no new agricultural enterprises. Existing ag customers will be asked to monitor their usage, repair leaks. During stage 2 and 3, with a district ag allocation of 45 and 25, existing ag customers will be asked to voluntarily reduce consumption by 15%. Nothing about penalties and surcharges or anything.
Right.
So I think at this stage of the game where we're at, we shouldn't have any. If we're having to follow our water shortage policy. Stage 4, then you've got some problems because we're really having to cut back. That's just based on our,
Our
I mean,
2010 policy? or
yeah,
2010?
revised in
Right.
2010.
It needs updating, but it is based on that. And that's why I mentioned, even though it's drafted as a stage 3, we may want to go to stage 2. And we may want to just put somewhere in here that because we're at stage 2, these violations or these penalties are not in effect.
Right.
So potentially, we should have a much clearer picture by, what, mid-May of any potential cutbacks from the Bureau,
Yes.
and have a real clear picture of what our real allocation for the year is, in which case we would have to do another special meeting, institute penalties back in, you know, public notice, and do that process.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, so on page 2, that first paragraph where it says the 80% or 75% of 2019 figures, I think you can just strike that completely, because we're not gonna institute that, right?
Going on the idea that we're gonna get the allocation that is presently presented by the Bureau, yes.
Right.
Well, can I just real quick, I agree, but I kind of think we might want to mention, first of all, change it to stage 2, policy that looks to voluntary
Reduce, yeah,
reduction, blah, blah,
right,
blah, blah,
by
whatever.
15%, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, there we go. And then,
So what about M and I then?
No,
Because
no.
in here, we're talking about 40 HCF for M and I customers.
I don't think there should be restrictions on anybody.
Okay, good, and I'm reasonable with that. If it comes to restrictions because we're cut back some, I'd still like to see us try to push that 40 up to 50, if possible.
I think Director McVeigh, to the chair, has a very, very good point, but I really think that would be something that if we hear end of April, beginning of May, that we need to come back and declare stage 3 or a stage
Right.
4 or
Right.
something like that, then
Exactly.
my guess is we would probably try to keep it at stage 3 and then put something like this language and maybe do 90% of 2019 and 55 HCF, whatever. We could
Correct.
come up with some numbers like that. But I think for this modification, we really need to tell our customers that we're lifting the old ordinance because we have water, and they know, they can see it, it's raining out there. They got
Right.
an umbrella. So, I mean, we need to, like, be real here. And so, this is good, I think, this is fun.
Sure, Erwin?
First of all, I'm not in favor of putting on a route ordinance at the meeting in March. I agree with you, I think we ought to put it off a while. But I do want to point out something, that what we have available to us this year so far will be 2,199 acre-feet of water for domestic use.
Sure.
That's it. If you break that down, that only amounts, and use 2,710 customers, right? Which we have, that includes people in the trailer parks as well. That only turns out to be 30 HCF a month.
But out of that 2710, I think about 230 are ag customers.
230 customers.
Right.
So
Okay, so
20,
that'll bring it up a little bit.
yeah.
But anyway, I point that out. The other thing in it that and I talked to Paul about this ordinance here doesn't distinguish between ag water and domestic. And we've got 4,563 acre-feet of ag water. What do we need a drought restriction on that for? We don't.
No.
So this drought ordinance ought to refer just to domestic water. Because the other water, they got all the water they want. So not all the water they want, but a substantial amount of water where we have a problem or a potential problem in the future will be in the domestic side, on the M&I side.
I guess my comment back to you would be what the drought ordinance, or the drought policy says, and the water storage, and what it talks about, what we currently have, what a stage 2 is and what a stage 3 is, and what it talks about. And it talks about the allocations for M&I and what we should be doing, and the allocations for ag. So I think that's why this ordinance has to have both. It has to talk about both of them.
It doesn't, but it puts penalties on people for using ag water when they're not going to be restricted to 40 HCF.
Yeah, the proposal is to remove all the penalties and no restrictions. The-
40 HCF a month, or 75%. That's not fair for the agriculturalists, I would think.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think what I'm hearing is a better way to go, which is we need to adopt an ordinance that gets rid of the current heavily restrictive ordinance.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do one that puts us at stage 2, which basically just asks both M&I and agriculture for voluntary 15%. Well, actually asks, for voluntary voluntary 15%. Get rid of the numbers. In other words, people can use water really unlimitedly.
Welcome to use water.
And then if we hear that our allocation gets changed and we need to come back and actually put some restrictions, use restrictions, then we can make a determination on whether or not it's a use restriction for M&I and different for ag or irrigation, or if they all should be together. The reason I'm going to defend the board of 2022-01 that approved this a little bit, at least I think what they were thinking, is that we had a zero allocation of everything.
Yeah.
So in other words, this restriction was a blanket restriction, and it had to be that.
Yeah.
But now that we have an allocation that has really sufficient water for agriculture, we should not be a blanket restriction. And I think that's what you're saying. But I'm suggesting, and it's really up to you, that when we look at this on the 15th, we go to stage 2 and we comply with our stage 2, which is voluntary, no restrictions, no penalties, no nothing. And then if we ever hear that we need to come back with a stage 3 or stage 4, then we'll figure out.
That makes sense.
One question along those lines though, what's the time frame? Because a couple of years ago, the board kept delaying and penalties and restrictions didn't really hit until September, did they?
Right.
So we don't want, and that meant that we used up any allocations. So my question is, what's the time frame for changing this if our allocations are cut? Is it a 30-day public hearing?
No, it's a public hearing.
7-day?
I know it's confusing. The public hearing has to be noticed.
Right.
You have a public hearing, and then it's enacted 30 days after you've done it. So your lag time for it impacting is about 40 days, a little less than that. It's about 38 days, 36 days. But just remember though, let's just say we find out on May 1st that we need to get going on this thing, right? Well, the good news is we've used some of our water allocation, and we're not, but we're going to use up a lot of the stuff. So in other words, we can hurry up and have an April 15th meeting. We can have everything impact people on May 15th. That would moderate our water usage. But I don't think, I'm not too worried about that. I mean, I think we have some.
And we still have the wells.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be fine.
We're not gonna run out of water.
Yeah.
So I had some questions in regards to violations on page 4, and also then on the variances. But we don't need to discuss that. Will that really be taken out of the stage 2 ordinance that we're going to institute? So these fines and penalties and stuff are not even going to be on here? If that's true, then I don't need to talk about the couple issues.
Right, the protest and variance
Yeah.
laws would go away.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to make comment about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
What, you want me to? Okay, so,
yeah.
Yeah, bring it up.
all right, so under violations of section E22 of this ordinance, which was 22 on page 4, at the very bottom, you changed up above that you were gonna put it mailed in their bills to notify them, the written notice of their violation. So for this violation down here in the middle of the page, it says, for all violations, a notice of violation will be sent to the current property owner billing address via their regular bill stating the violation. And I just read what you put in there, and what I thought I read is not what I just read now, so disregard what I just said. So, go to the next page. Via the regular bill stating the violation, I missed that part. Yeah. Okay, so under H variance. Under H variance, right here.
Oh, okay.
When we kind of had gone over this, I think after health and safety, you needed a comment. So it's not just health and safety at medical schools and state and federal agencies. The health and safety was for like large families, so if they had like lots of kids. So it was available only for health and safety, comma, get rid of the at, medical schools and state and federal. Okay, that was it.
Well, while you're on the topics there,
Okay.
protest and procedure to variances, it spells it out pretty well. Do you have the protest forms and the forms for the variance? Do we have those?
Thanks to our new administrative assistant, we have the best protest forms ever created by the district.
They're ready to go whenever we get a morning.
If we ever need them. Hopefully we will not need them. But, you know, I think one of the benefits of going through the process of the board reviewing all those protests that I brought to you back in December or whatever, was because the protest form was really lacking in information and background and checkoffs and all the rest of that stuff. So Kayla's done a good job of updating all that. So it's way, way better. So the general manager now has what he needs in front of him to make that decision, the same as if you had to do it.
Any discussion from the, yep, yes.
So I actually called around to a couple of different water districts to find out what they're doing. I mean, first they didn't want to give me information. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm a water user in another district. Just tell me what you guys do. Most of them did a voluntary. I just found that so interesting. They did a voluntary. They asked people to voluntarily, you know, limit their use of water. She said, it worked. They only went through a stage of really watching everybody's water use for 2 months, and then they came back and talked about it again, and she said they were in phase 1. So, that was very interesting to me, because I just, those fines and penalties last year, I only got one, it was $50, but it was staggering. I mean, you know, I'm like, okay, $1,500 opposed to, you know, $250 to go drive around and get water from other people, so it's basically what we were doing, or 4 loads a week. Well, we couldn't do it this year because of the price of diesel, it just wouldn't be feasible. It would be better to take the penalty. So I think our waterways have changed. People are conserving a lot. And it wasn't just those fines, it's just in your head. You know, I can't do this is not right. So I think people have changed out lawns for rocks. I know we have. The Fire State Council is another way of telling people we need to start thinking about how we are, what are we doing to reduce our fire limitations. I mean, as far as fire danger around our places, a lot of people changed out lawns for rocks. I know a lot of people that have done that. And another